Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and over the last year I've been moving away from D&D 5e and into Pathfinder 2nd edition, bringing you along for my journey and comparing some of the differences between the systems. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Ranger, perhaps one of the least enjoyed classes in 5th edition, let's just put it politely, and we're going to be seeing whether Pathfinder 2nd edition does it any different. So let's dive into it. This video is sponsored by Dungeons & Lasers 5, the world of Dea's Lair, more on them later. So here we have the screen for Ranger in both systems, and the first thing that I want to talk about is what is the intention with the Ranger, because I think that is where my problems with the 5e Ranger come from, is I don't think that the mechanics line up with the intention. So the intention of the Ranger is this loner who lives on the edges of civilization, protecting civilization from the wild. In contrast to a druid who protects the wild and nature from civilization, the Ranger is keeping people safe from the monsters that encroach at the edge of the world. They are your Aragorns, they're your Geralt of Rivias, they're your Men of the Night's Watch. And I've never felt like the 5e Ranger really lives up to that potential, mostly because of its pretty lackluster abilities. Now, the Ranger in PF2 gives us the same promise, this loner at the edge of civilization that protects the world from monsters. But we'll see whether it too fails to live up to that expectation or whether it actually delivers. So broadly speaking, a first level Ranger in both systems is going to be pretty similar. They both have a D10 based hit dice, so the Ranger will get 10 plus their con modifier at first level and then D10 plus their con mod HP every level after. The PF2 version just gets 10 plus their con modifier every level. So characters in PF2 are generally a little bit higher HP than 5e because they always get that max HP rather than an average or roll-in. And then they're both either strength or dexterity based classes. So in the quick build for the 5e Ranger, it says choose either dexterity or strength. And then in the PF2 Ranger, your key ability is strength or dexterity. You get to make that choice. In terms of proficiencies, again, they're broadly similar at first level. So the 5e version gets light and medium armor and shield proficiencies, whereas the PF2 gets light and medium armor proficiency. They both get proficiency in simple and martial weapons. They both have better saving throws for either strength and dexterity or fortitude and reflex as it is in PF2. And they both get an arrangement of skills. So in the 5e version, you get to choose 3 skills between animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, stealth, and survival, whereas in PF2 you get perception as a class-based skill, and then you are trained in a number of additional skills equal to 4 plus your intelligence modifier. So unless you dump intelligence, your PF2 Ranger is going to have more skills than your 5e Ranger. A 5e Ranger starts with a bunch of basic equipment. No class starts with equipment in PF2, you have to buy it, but there is a Ranger's kit that basically gives you all the stuff that a 5e Ranger gets. And then when we get to the features table, that's where things become really different. So our 5e Ranger is a half caster. They learn up to 5th level spells. And in my opinion, I would never see myself playing a half caster in 5e. They just don't have the mechanical versatility that a full caster gets. When you're at level 20 casting 5th level spells and your contemporaries are casting Time Stop and other 9th level spells, you might as well not be bringing magic to the table. In early levels, some of your spellcasting might be useful for additional healing or a pip or 2 of damage, but I really don't think, especially with the Ranger, that having spells is worth it. In fact, that's the whole reason that when I rebuilt the 5e Ranger for SIDEQUEST, I stripped out the magic and instead purely focused on that hunting martial aspect of the character. So looking at the first level feature, our kind of key defining feature for the class in both systems. Let's have a look here, and with our 5th edition version we get Favoured Enemy. Now this is a defining feature of the Ranger, your favoured enemy. You choose one type of enemy from the list, and that gives you advantage on your wisdom survival checks to track them, as well as on intelligence checks to recall information about them, and you also learn one language of your choice that's spoken by your favoured enemy. You get access to additional favoured enemies as you level up, but for the most part, favoured enemy is pretty lackluster. When you combine it with the other first level ability that Rangers get, Natural Explorer, you end up with a quite underwhelming first level as a Ranger. So Natural Explorer is one of these abilities that it'll either be really useful in your campaign or you'll never see any play from it. And it all depends on how much your GM incorporates the exploration pillar of the game. If you're running quite a hex map kind of campaign where you're out in the wilds and you're doing a lot of traveling, Natural Explorer is going to be a great choice. It's going to give you a lot of flexibility, and you're also going to circumvent a lot of problems that you otherwise would run into, like you can't get lost and you get more food and stuff like that. Whereas if your campaign isn't really focused on exploration, a lot of these features just aren't going to get used. That's my biggest problem with the 5th edition Ranger, is it's a very all or nothing class. In the right kind of campaign, the Ranger will be great. It will give you a lot of flexibility, you'll get a lot of mileage out of its abilities. But unless you are playing a very specific kind of campaign, a lot of the Ranger's abilities just don't matter. Compare that with the PF2 Ranger. Their kind of two core abilities are Hunt Prey and Hunter's Edge. Hunt Prey is an action. You mark a target as your prey. Once the target is marked as your prey, you get a bonus to tracking that creature, and you also ignore the range penalty for shooting it above a certain range. But it fulfills the same broad category as Favored Enemy, but you don't have to choose a whole type. You just look at something and go, you, which is much more flexible because it will apply in many more situations. Every combat you can benefit from it. Every situation where you would want to access those rules, you'll be able to benefit from it. And then you get the Hunter's Edge, which gives you a different specialization based on what you choose. If we go ahead and click on them, you've got 3 options to choose from. You've got Flurry, which makes you hit more frequently by reducing your multiple attack penalty when targeting your prey. You've got Outwit, which is more of an intimidation and recall knowledge social based one. And then you've got Precision, which will do more damage to your prey. So already both of these classes in both systems have this is a character who's going to mark a target as their prey, and that means that they get a bunch of extra buffs to them. But in 5th edition, all that applies to is tracking them, really. Whereas in PF2, you get some mechanical combat-based benefits, and you're not locked into a specific creature type. Archon Studios are returning to Kickstarter with their Dungeons and Lasers line, and this time they're funding a brand new campaign set in the world of Deus Lair. Deus Lair is a dark fantasy setting filled with epic battles, fantastic beasts, and moral dilemmas where there is no clear right and wrong. This campaign includes a setting book which introduces the world of Deus Lair, as well as the unique peoples that inhabit it, and a full bestiary for the many new monsters and enemies introduced in the campaign. And speaking of monsters, the campaign is funding more than 400 different miniatures, which is the main reason to back it. Dungeons and Lasers have become known for giving buckets of minis in their Kickstarters, and Deus Lair is no exception. There are miniatures for the new factions, monsters, and playable races of Deus Lair, and you can also pick up some of their legacy miniatures from older Dungeons and Lasers campaigns here too. All of the miniatures are made from injection molded plastic. There's none of that PVC material here, and they all come in multi-part pieces on sprues. The Kickstarter is live until April 26, and there is a link down in the description to head over there and check it out. But thanks again to Archon Studio for supporting the channel. Now, back to the video. Then going through the rest of the Ranger's progression in both systems, both of them get access to extra abilities that help them circumvent difficult terrain and things like that. Both of them get better at kind of perception and those kind of elements of the game. Then we get to top level abilities for both of them. From level 14, you can hide as a bonus action for a 5th edition Ranger. Then you get Feral Senses, which allows you to detect invisible creatures when they're near you. And then you get their Capstone ability, which is Foe Slayer, which just lets you add your Wisdom modifier to your attack roll or the damage roll of an attack you make against your favored enemies. I really think that 5e's Capstone abilities are really boring. I'm really looking forward to seeing 1D&D introduce the feat system into the Capstone ability because it will make much more varied characters. But that is something the PF2 Ranger already gets. So at 20th level, they get a Ranger feat, which is going to give them a lot of options, including one that allows you to kind of steal time from your future self to give you 6 actions in one turn in exchange for only having 1 action in the next turn. It's a really flavorful ability and I really like it. But overall, as with pretty much all of the comparisons we've done so far, and I suspect for all the comparisons we'll do in the future, the real big difference between these two versions of the class just come from the system. So the base features that you get, the named features you get between the both of these versions of the Ranger aren't remarkably different. But the Pathfinder version gets those Ranger feats, gets all of those choice points which makes so much difference. In 5th edition, 2 Dwarf Swarmkeeper Rangers are going to be nearly identical unless they've taken feats instead of their ability score improvements. They might have a different fighting style, but that's about the only way they're going to be different, versus 2 Dwarf Rangers in PF2, because they have all of those choice points between skill feats, ancestry feats, general feats, and ranger feats, are going to look much more different. So you can really focus in on what you want your ranger to be. If you want your ranger to be purely martial, no spells, you can do that. If you want to dip into a little bit of magic, you have access to the warden spells, which are focus spells, so you get a pool of focus points starting at 1 that allow you to just do a little bit of spellcasting each day. Or you can dip into the archetypes and pick up some spellcasting from somewhere else. In terms of the core abilities though, I do think that the PF2 Ranger's Hunt Prey is just a better version of Favoured Enemy. It's not as restrictive as a specific creature type, which I think is more flavourful, saying this specific type of creature is my favourite enemy. They're what I've been fighting on the frontier of civilization. That has a lot of story potential, but just being able to go, I am a master hunter, I'm going to hunt this prey, this thing is marked as my prey, I get a bunch of mechanical benefits against it, including some combat stuff, is just better in my opinion. But I'd love to know what you think about the 2 Rangers in the comments down below. Do you prefer the look of the 5e Ranger or the Pathfinder 2 version? Are you surprised at how similar or different they are? Let me know down there in the comments. And if you want to keep watching, check out my video on the clerics between the 2 systems. But until next time, happy gaming.